Our next guest is Sid Perez, who has arrived not so long ago from the Philippines. I've been saying for the last couple of days that we have people of all walks of life, artists, collectors, etc. There's also people running spaces, and Sid's also running an online platform. So right. I'd like to ask you a little bit, because I know you have curatorial practice. Can you tell us how that led, how you got to starting Plantingrice.com, your online platform, and then what it does?
Plantingrice started with me and Lian Ladia, who's also an independent curator. So it just so happened like we enjoyed each other's independent work and we wanted to do something together. And it seemed, at that time, like the easiest platform to do something online, something we can maintain and having to scramble around and make exhibitions together. And at the same time, it turned out that it was necessary. It was necessary for the community that's starting to look at independent initiatives, like in Manila, because it's back to that. We're on that cycle. We're on that spot in the cycle. Yeah, with the independent stuff.
When you're saying independent, I mean people who are involved in the art scene probably have some idea. But if you're not so involved, what are you independent of? Like, could you? I know that's a sort of basic question, but it's interesting to tease that out.
Actually, in the Philippines, everyone's independent. Yeah, because the art community is the economy in the Philippines does not provide so much for the artistic community there. Like so support. The biggest sector is the commercial galleries and private benefactors. So being independent means you're just not bound to any sector. Right. And then you're just doing your own thing. Sometimes a lot of initiatives are not even registered. But
are you
I shouldn't be saying that. We will be very soon.
We will be. But you also have, I know that you and Lian, you both have commercial sort of experience, right?
Yes, we do.
You've both worked in commercial galleries.
Yes, that's right.
And surely you learned something there which gives your independent practice also another element or another edge.
Well, it totally built our, I guess it's character building for us, and then it helps us navigate a certain system. So
is that a polite way of saying it taught you what you don't want to do?
And hence, that's why I broke away from that.
But, I mean, we're in an art fair, but we can say that. It's okay.
I don't like my previous bosses saying this or hearing this.
Okay, we won't say who they are. But there is, is there a relationship there? Do you look to make any sort of connections to the sort of commercial scene? I mean, artists, a lot of artists who work with independent initiatives, they're also trying to sell their work or they're trying to get grants. Is there a space for that in Manila, for example?
A space for
working together with a mixture of independent, non-profit style spaces.
With the commercial sector?
Yeah. Or is that not quite possible, you think?
No, I think the people working in the artistic community there is completely, I suppose, quite polygamous. Like we can do several jobs. But there are some that have a commercial dimension, but it's a different sort of structure, like what they're working in a way that they're looking at more alternative channels, like presenting different formats of work, bringing in different sorts of people, fostering a different channel of exchange, like focusing on like the Japan network or the Australian network. So it's all, very different flavor.
You're kind of touching on some of the content of the site. I think if people go to plantingrice.com, they find news, articles, and so on. So it's really quite broad.
Yes.
Where's it going to go? Like, what's your goal for the site itself? Do you have a particular audience in mind? Because I see that there's also like information about grant applications, which seems to be more for artists.
Right.
There's articles about like art history.
Yes. So I guess it's not very you don't see, like, the content that we choose may not be very working in a specific framework, but Leanne and I started this with our network. We pulled our network together, and we just responded to that network, what's needed and what they want, which is information about the Philippines, because it's like you mentioned in our correspondence, it's quite a muddled area in terms of, I guess, art history, or where it fits, where our position in the whole global scene, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess I was interested as well because I know that from an art historical sort of perspective, the Philippines has had art schools and practices for a long time. And a lot of people looking at Asian art history don't really seem to know that. Is that a fair comment, or?
It's a very fair comment. It's because text is not, I guess, text in the written language, English is our second language, and there has been a gap in art history because nobody writes about them, or it's not accessible. It's not accessible at all. And I guess our history, the Philippines, is grounded on oral history. So text is actually secondary. So we hope that Plantingrice can be able to fill that vacuum in a sense.
This is kind of jumping, but can you explain the choice that you made to use Plantingrice as a platform? The name itself, what kind of vision is that?
Oh, Plantingrice. You know that song Plantingrice is never fun? I learned that in Singapore when I was studying there, and I didn't realize it was a song about the Philippines. So it seeks to ground that. Plantingrice.com seeks to ground that context, that it's about the Philippine artistic community, or its variation, and we hope. Well, we're how do you say it? We're planting rice now, but we don't know what we'll harvest in the future. But
Right.
it seems very. It seems like it's gonna be quite abundant.
I think it's really catchy. That's my way of saying it. You've worked you've studied and worked, I think, in Singapore, and I think Leanne is also
In San Francisco. No, I did primary school in Singapore,
Oh, okay.
but I went back to the Philippines.
So it just sounds very international, and I know your networks. You said you pooled your networks. What sort of experiences are you bringing to Plantingrice? If you go on the site, I think there's some people, there's links leading to places in Japan, other local sort of platforms. Could you tell us a little bit about that network?
The Philippines is not just influence, or it's just not part of the Southeast Asian region. I feel that we're more affixed, or we can relate more to our diaspora, because we have a strong motion of that. And I guess Plantingrice, one of our goals is to be able to present the news of Filipino artists like doing other things abroad. So this is just, we can't determine the channels in which like every individual artist, maneuver around. So it's just, I guess we're trying to present the community in its multiple voices, multiple networks, and we seek to just mobilize what's there, what's happening. So I guess that's the relevance. That's how we articulate our ethics, I suppose. It's based on that.
Is there something connecting artists in that diaspora? Are there similar issues that people might be reflecting that you think are like, young Filipino artist issues, or is it really diverse?
At the moment, it has helped, I suppose, the community who's functioning, that's operating elsewhere. By bringing in that information, it has helped, I guess, because both parties, both communities benefit from each other, because there's an exchange of,
you mean the local
ideas, the local and I guess the internationally based artists. it helped them, I guess, in a sense, like pursue other formats, pursue other ideas. And I think that's what makes our community very special, because we can't pin down the channels. It's always ambiguous, but it's always happening all simultaneously, all at the same time. Because it's hard to find certain trends then in the Philippines. Even the activities of the community is quite tough, even for me who's based there.
Right. So there's no particular sort of trends in the Manila like art scene at the moment?
At the moment, like I was telling you before, there's a lot of more alternative-based works or projects, because the last 2 years, the market has swooped down on the artistic community there. So everybody has been grappling, everybody's been focusing on the commercial galleries. And right now, I guess, now that it has sunk in, the artists are trying to pursue other modes, like they're trying to look at the, I guess, art and labor and what they can do. I guess what they can do by themselves without having to produce like an oil on canvas. Yeah.
Right. So does that lead to sort of temporal practices, like installation, performance, that type of thing, or is it different?
Yes.
Right.
Because we've had a history of that, but more on the periphery. Like it's the Manila, more on the periphery, outside Manila. But I guess it's starting to bleed in now.
And is there much acceptance for that? I mean, I know in other parts of Asia, sometimes it can be difficult to work in, for example, performance or installation is kind of limited by spaces, or what's the situation in the Philippines?
Like working with different
working
formats?
With those sorts of formats. Is there much understanding or acceptance for these formats?
Within the artistic community or with a broader audience?
Audiences.
Audiences. I think those sort of alternative formats are more accommodated by the audience, more than the gallery setup. The white cube, it's still difficult for people to understand or be in touch with that sort of spaces.
Right.
Yeah.
On your website, you say that there's a curatorial platform between you and Lian. Yep. So you're working on projects together? Yes.
Plantingrice is also our curatorial collaborative banner. So we've done exhibitions, but right now we're focusing on independent publishing, small press.
Publishing?
Yes.
So it's online and offline?
Yes. We're quite excited about that.
What kind of things are you publishing?
We're just about to work on that. So we hope to produce an artist monograph by next year. Mm-hmm. And also another book on the Alice and Lucinda exhibitions, which we did last March, actually.
Could you explain a little bit about those exhibitions? I think most people here probably didn't get a chance to go.
To go to the exhibitions? Yeah, that's true.
What sort of artists are we talking about?
Sorry?
What sort of artists are we talking about for like those exhibitions?
Alice and Lucinda is a collaborative project between Lena Cobangbang and Yasmin Sison, who have individual careers now, but this is the fictional collaborative team in the 1998. So we dealt with their archives. So Plantingrice, Lian and I worked on their archives, presented them in Vargas Museum. So it wasn't about making new work. So we're just trying to represent it to the audience because we think they're a very pivotal team that I guess reflected the community then, and very well the community then in the late 90s.
Thanks. In the region, there's other people I think at the moment trying to set up independent practices through sometimes spaces like physical spaces or online or festivals. Do you connect to those? Do you have friends elsewhere?
Is that your experience in Japan, and where were you? Where you usually based?
Well, this is one of the things. I think I noticed a Koganecho sort of like person sort of came to speak. I'm wondering what sort of connections you have there, whether people are aware of what you've been doing and want to share that experience across the borders of East Asia, Southeast Asia, or further afield.
Mayumi, the manager for Koganecho, Mayumi Hirano, is actually bringing two Japanese artists to the Philippines and has opened the applications to Koganecho for Filipino artists. So that's quite exciting. So we also do like residencies in Australia and Manila. So there's quite a lot going on.
And you're facilitating those, is it?
We try.
I was just trying to find out, like, because usually people work through institutions and that type of thing, so it's hard to know how independent spaces or platforms are making these things happen.
Where have you spent most of your time in Seoul, Japan?
My background, like most recently, has been in Japan, and so when I'm looking at it, I guess I'm looking at it through that, as well as here in Hong Kong, being based here. There's people here doing similar sorts of things, trying to find independent spaces, but a lot of it's tied to government support.
Yeah,
and so I don't know how that works in the Philippines. You said there's nothing there.
No, not at all. But it's all the artists and the cultural workers putting up their own spaces. Yeah.
Right. And did you have an art practice? Is that your background? Or?
No, I don't. I studied art management. I've been babysitting artists since I was in college.
Babysitting.
Yeah.
And you're still here.
Sorry.
And you're still here, doing well.
Thank you.
What's next? Do you think that you would like a space, for example, if it was viable? Is that we'd
like an office, so we won't be going from one place to another. Yeah. But then again, we're online. We just need to be online. It's a website. We just need to have a desktop. We can work from home. Yeah, just an office would be good though.
And do you need day jobs? Like, that's a really practical question. But when people say, "Oh, we've got this independent thing," often it means I'm not really sleeping much because I have two jobs right now. One of them is my art practice, and one of them is the other. Like, how does that work for you?
Yes, we do have day jobs, Leanne and I. We also do a lot of freelance commissioned writing for the galleries. And that informs a lot of... It helps us. It's also another channel of getting information. So I guess it just feeds... Our projects are just... how do you say it? Our projects are tied together. So what we earn, what we get from... what we earn from one area will pay for our independent work. At the same time, our independent work is focusing on mobilizing the community. So I guess there's
feeding into one another.
Yeah. It's such a strange network now. I feel now we're working with that, like creating a different sort of value. Like, it's important, like networking, like having access to one is
that why you're here? I was going to ask, like, why are you in Hong
actually,
Kong?
I haven't been... I'm finding it hard to do that. I'm just enjoying the art fair.
I'm just interested, as an independent sort of platform, you're obviously interested in those kinds of practices, but the art fair is there's a bottom line.
It's a totally different,
you know what I mean? But you're still here to look at work. Is that right?
Yes, but I'm more interested in looking at the educational program of the art fair.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you trying to connect to other spaces? Like, I'm kind of wondering, what does an art fair do for somebody interested in the sorts of practices?
I haven't tried yet. But yeah, it's important for us to connect with spaces that share our sensibility, because like independent initiatives are not are mostly short-lived, and it's a fact. So by tying up with this network of other platforms, it helps us connect, I guess, mobilizes each other, and that in turn provides us to come up with a model of how to be more sustainable. It's just all about working together. It's about community and access, really.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. think I'm going to have to wrap it up, actually. But plantingrice.com, Sid Perez has joined us here for Guerrilla Talks, and there's a lot more information that's going to be online. Is there something you can tell us just to round off that you have coming up aside from the publishing? Is there something going online? Do you have something to watch out for?
What we'll have in the next issue, in the next newsletter, we'll have a feature on Carlos Villa and Mike Arcega, who are based in San Francisco. They got the Guggenheim Fellowship, so we're covering that. And what?
Sorry to put you on the spot. There's lots of interesting stuff coming up. Plantingrice.com.
Yeah. Just watch out for it next the end of the month.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sid.
Thank you.
Sorry to do that to you.
I'm so